help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. When she just came out, she told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast. And we are in our studio at our HQ in the now closed Planned Parenthood abortion facility, and we are going to cover a very positive topic, and that is the best experiences we have personally ever had at a 40 Days for Life campaign, and we want you to email us your best experiences at podcast@40daysforlife, or you can leave them on the comment section if you're on the YouTube page for the entire world to see. So one of my best experiences is hosting this podcast with Steve Carlin and Heather Gardner. How are y'all?
Fabulous.
I'm doing great. Always happy to be here in Texas.
Because you hate Wisconsin and the fact that the Brewers did not have long playoff run
Way
like you
soon.
wanted. Sorry. Steve and I were in a conversation earlier, Heather, and we have a question because I learned something about Steve, and that is one of the many things that I've learned, for better or for worse. You've had a fantasy football team for like 38 years, and you're only 40.
That's more or less correct. There are points in my life where I paid more or less attention to it. This is definitely a less stage, but I still, thanks to my son who refuses to replace me, have a team.
Currently, what is your team's name?
The Tri-State Area Cartographers.
Which was, of course, what I was going to guess.
Yeah.
But I was way off.
Tri-State. I'm trying to think, what's the short
What is that?
name for that?
What is
Tri-State Cartographers.
Tri-State area, I mean, there's a lot of tri-state areas. It could be, what does it mean to you, Sean? And a cartographer is a map maker. Yes. One who makes maps.
So you're the Tri-State map makers.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
I don't know why.
So I told you my side of the family, this is like our big bonding thing because everybody lives far off, and I've lived different parts of the country. So we have a family fantasy football league. We've had it about 10 years. It's a lot of fun. We have cousins involved. It's a lot of fun. My mom's always up for great commentary, as you can imagine, around draft day. So I talked a lot of trash at the beginning. I know nothing about fantasy football. I'm horrible at it, but I love talking trash.
Yeah, that's the best part.
That's the best part.
It's the reason to do it.
And then somehow the first year I won. So I was like,
Awesome.
This is easy. Y'all are all idiots. Y'all are doing homework and watching TV shows. I just got on and was like, yeah, Tom Brady's the best. I'm going to start him. So anyways, I won. And ever since then, I've been horrible. But my team name, I think, is a little bit more understandable than yours. Mine is all work, no play.
That does make sense, I suppose. It's hard to fit it in. It doesn't have a real relevance to football, though, does it?
I want to intimidate the other teams, even though I do nothing and take no time for my fantasy team. And I've had players that have a bye, and I've forgotten to go in and switch them out. So it's really no work at all.
Yeah, I see that. That's similar to a guy that used to be in my fantasy football league back in college who always drafted the guys who had felony convictions because he wanted a team that would play like it had nothing to lose.
It's a really good fantasy football approach. So all of this.
I live in the real world, not the fantasy world, so.
Ooh.
You don't have a fantasy football team?
I don't.
Your words are hurtful.
Okay.
This is sad. That means no one's invited you to be in their league.
There's
that angle of it.
They probably know that I wouldn't
Would say no?
I would say no because I live in the real world.
No part of you wants a fantasy football?
No.
Do you keep up with any sports? You keep up with A&M.
Astros.
Okay.
But you're into true crime. Do you have a fantasy crime league?
The six-pack murderers.
Yeah. I got the
No.
first pick. I get Dahmer.
Yeah, there's. Oh gosh, yeah. See, that's the stuff you want to avoid because this is serious. This is a real world. That's why it's called true crime.
Okay.
Okay.
I think the true. We've mentioned this on the pod. The true crime cult bothers me. To me, it's like 11 levels weirder, despite his weird team name, weirder than fantasy football, because that is kind of real life. And you're going in and they're talking about how people are murdered.
Yes.
Instead, you could just go like draft Pat Mahomes and have like this clean.
Or I could learn how to not be murdered. Which is
I
far
think
more.
we've successfully
important
turned the
life
table.
lesson.
Aren't you supposed to? Yeah, I think we
She
have
said
turned the
we're
table.
losers, and we say, no, you're the loser.
You're not taking jujitsu. That's how you don't get murdered. You
don't
kill
know
the
that.
guy before he can pull his knife on you.
Okay.
The true crime thing, I think there's something very dark, and this is post our Exorcist podcast, and I'm saying this is something very dark about, hey, I mean, I understand. I've had, like, and then he put her in the freezer. That's just...
Yeah, it's dark.
And it's not as though you have a light, jovial, day-to-day at work topic to think about. You're
Exactly.
not.
I
Oh,
know.
who in this office is doing the water cooler with her after the weekend? I mean, we could have like one of our great IT guys being like, "Can you believe that Josh Allen got injured or whatever happens?" And she's like,
Yeah, I just talked to BTK's
"Do
daughter.
you know that it's possible to whip off the human toe in just 6 strikes?" And he's like, "What?"
No. I'm not a crazy cult leader follower.
Do you get this
whatever.
from Abby Johnson? Because she's part of that cult with the true crime stuff.
She's part of it. Yeah, she's part of it. We enjoy the
She
true
probably has a
crime
fantasy
together.
football team though.
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
If you want to comment on that, you can, which is, I guess, more troubling. I think fantasy football seems far more innocent, although I am troubled by your team's name and its lack of meaning. Or
Do you remember when we were kids, there was a Nickelodeon show called Rocco's Modern Life?
I didn't have cable, so no.
You had the bad cousin who had cable, though.
I had the bad
The
cousin
bad
that had
cousin.
cable.
I don't remember Rocco.
No? Okay. Well,
I remember Double Dare.
Okay, so this is probably I don't know what it was. I didn't watch it. I wasn't allowed to watch it. There was some like innuendo that wasn't meant for kids, and my parents were like, "Nope, not this anymore." But I had a team that was Flacco's Modern Life, so it's a little more relevant to NFL than making maps.
So you just changed the name of the Nickelodeon show to your fantasy football team.
Yeah, after Joe Flacco, remember?
Well, this is now, I was going to move on, but we can't. How many different fantasy football team names have you had in your life?
Quite a few.
Over or under a dozen?
I'd say I'd set the over/under as a dozen. I'm not exactly sure.
You were supposed to be like, no, not that many. That was the real. That's the answer I thought I was going to. A dozen. Give me some names.
I don't know if I remember any other names.
Flacco's
Modern Life. It's a distinct minority, but somebody that listens to the podcast is laughing right now. Somebody will find that funny. Not the majority, but somebody
Okay.
will. And then the cartographers, and I don't remember what else.
That's amazing. So you forgot 10 of the teams that you have managed.
Yeah, it's like when someone knows a lot and they're like, "This guy's forgotten more about fantasy football team names than I'll ever know." It's because they're that good.
Okay. Oh, they're that good. Okay.
I'm just picturing them like with like when we were in school, like drawing geography maps, coloring in maps with map pencils, or what do y'all call them up north? I learned recently y'all don't call them map pencils.
Map pencils? I've never.
Yes. Yeah. See, he's never heard of that. We call them map pencils.
Yeah.
You call
Ours
them
were just called colored pencils.
colored pencils.
But they say
yeah.
pop.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Am
I
Give that-
don't, for what it's worth. I'm
Good.
like a little island in Wisconsin that says soda.
Is that because of our Texas influence on you of coming down here that you gave up pop?
No, if you were a good cartographer like me, you would know that there are maps that show what people call different things. And
When did you have your first Dr. Pepper?
it was probably like 8 or 9.
The greatest day of your life.
Yeah, that's still a long time.
My brother put it on his cereal. That's what I remember about it. We were in the mountains on vacation.
Nothing's healthier than
milk,
Cinnamon
yeah.
Toast Crunch with a bunch of Dr. Pepper poured over it.
We've gone down such a
God
rabbit
bless
trail.
America. We are going to move on.
You tell it's
because-
a while since we've been in studio here. We're happy,
Yeah,
happy
it is.
to be together.
It has been a while. We're happy to be together. Okay, so we have said many times, the stat that we ourselves did not create. But the former Planned Parenthood workers say, hey, when 40 Days for Life is out in front of our abortion facilities, the no-show rate goes as high as 75%. Now, to me, there is no other valid reason we need to continue going out. Like, we don't want to, we don't feel like it, all that stuff. But when the workers say that, when it goes up as high as 75%, the no-show rate for the appointment, you just imagine if you take like Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell and 10 or 15% of people just won't go there because there's some ridiculous human that doesn't like those restaurants for some reason standing outside. That's huge. 10% be huge, 15% be huge, but as high as 75% because of the already natural controversial nature of abortion, it just skyrockets.
Yeah. It's I love that it's not just from, because people could basically make the claim that, oh, those are just disgruntled former workers, and so they're all making that up, but it's not from them. It's actually from Planned Parenthood. In that conference that Abby went to not long before she left Planned Parenthood, and I think it was a workshop that was at that conference entitled "How to Deal with Anti-Choice Protesters," which I always like.
Great
to point.
workshop.
I always like to point at the audience if I'm speaking in front of pro-lifers. That's you.
That's right.
So that's it. It's amazing, and I know that Abby had said early on that the no-show rate was already averaging just by itself around 25%,
which is the highest of any surgery, if I remember. The last time I looked it up, because if you're getting a root canal, or you're getting a knee replacement surgery, heart surgery, you're showing up. You're getting a tumor removed, you show up. But abortion, it's already at 20%, which is extremely high for a surgery.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have a lot of great things.
We're adding 55% to it. So in that context, we're going to cover some of the best experiences that we've had personally. This should warm your heart. It should also encourage you. This is the time of year where we start talking about continuing to go out after a 40 Days for Life campaign. We have so many new 365 locations where 40 Days for Life continues throughout the year. Every business hour that a given abortion facility or local Planned Parenthood referral center is open. So we encourage you to check out that map online and continue to go out. They say it takes 21 days to form a habit. So if you've been praying for an end to abortion for 40 days, you could continue. And if you've been going out once a week or a couple times a week, you could continue to go out year round. That's detrimental to the business of a local abortion facility. But what is one of your most moving personal experiences? And then I want the viewers and the listeners to send us theirs.
Yes, lots of them. The first one that came to my mind was this happened, I would say, about a year and a half ago. And this was in Austin, right at an abortion facility that is now permanently closed. Thank God. It's the only one that closed after Dobbs. But I was praying with my friend Katrina, and we had some other prayer volunteers on the sidewalk, but we were standing on one side of the driveway, and there was a woman who, this particular facility was in an office complex. So there's lots of other offices, lots of, parking all over. She pulls into a parking space right in front of where we're standing, and she gets out and she comes and she sits on the ledge right next to where we're standing. And she just immediately starts tearing up and sharing with us that she just doesn't know what to do, that she's really torn. So she starts sharing, kind of the struggles that she's going through, often things that we hear, she's got problems with her family, they're struggling financially. She and her boyfriend are both very much wanting to have kids at some point, but this was just a terrible time because of XYZ. So we were able to talk with her about the resources, kind of address some of the needs that they're facing, the concerns that they're facing. And then there was this, I have to go back inside. So turns out she had already been inside, and she had come out and driven over to us to talk to us, which is unusual because they often don't want to let you in.
Right.
And so, or let you out once you've already gotten in. And she said, I have to go back outside because my cell phone is in there. They confiscated my cell phone when I got in, which I'm just like, that's such a typical, like, wow, they don't want you texting anybody. They don't want you to change your mind.
Legitimate healthcare.
Totally
Every
legit,
time you go to the dentist, they take your iPhone.
Right.
It's just like standard,
Right.
insurance.
So normally I would say in a situation which many of us have heard about or even witnessed ourselves, in a situation where they say, well, I have to go back in to get my refund, that's when we would say, do not do it. We will refund your money. Don't go back in there because they're going to try to coerce you into going. And so we were able to share with her that, okay, you have to go back in and get your cell phone. But I basically gave it to her straight. If you go back inside, this is likely what they're going to tell you. And you have to be strong enough to just demand your phone and walk out of there because that's your right. You deserve better. Your baby deserves better. You have to be strong. Can you do this? I can't walk in there with you.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Because I think if you're listening to this, you're thinking, but aren't you now her friend or you've bonded and she can go in and say, no, she's helping me through this. It would be, I think, a difficult legal situation for Planned Parenthood if you're basically aiding her. I mean, you could say she couldn't walk or whatever, but you're going in to just stand there. Of course, the minute you say anything, they're going to have you arrested for face. But I really, even though you helped her in the clinic, you didn't prevent her from going in. There's an irony. But had you had experience with that where they went in for the refund and they ended up having the abortion? It's very good insight on your behalf, but
yes.
Has that happened to you before?
Mm-hmm. Not in a long time, but yeah, I've witnessed that before.
It's never happened to me. That's crushing.
It's happened in Austin.
And you're sitting here going, for $500,
right?
We'd have saved the baby.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, I've had other people that were volunteers that called me like in Austin later to say, this is what's happening right now. And I remind them, because we would include in our sidewalk counseling training, if this happens, you tell them we will pay. And I'm not telling you that you personally have to pay. I will personally pay. I'll sacrifice whatever I need to give $500 to this lady to refund her money, so that she's not feeling that burden of being financially invested in this surgery, this awful surgery. And it's like, but on top of that, I could just post on Facebook or anything and say, hey, this is the situation. Who would like to contribute $20 to go towards reimbursing this mom so that and I would easily get that money. There'd easily be people that would, probably some people, here's $100, here's $500, here's whatever.
It's the easiest GoFundMe in the world.
Yes.
I mean, assuming GoFundMe doesn't pull it off of their website, but like whatever service you use to raise money, anybody coast to coast is sending in some money for that.
Yes, yeah. So thankfully she went back inside to get her cell phone and she did come out. But that whole time it was probably only 15 minutes, but it seemed like 15 hours that she was inside. So that whole time, Katrina and I were just standing there praying to God, please, please, please don't let them talk her back into this. Please let her walk out. And sure enough, she drives out, her boyfriend's with her, and she stops and she's crying and she says, thank you so much. And we're gonna keep the baby. We're gonna do this. Thank you for these resources. And she actually wasn't even from Austin. She was from another town about an hour away. So she left that day. She didn't have her abortion. It was one of those things. It was the first time Katrina and I had experienced something like that together on the sidewalk. And she and I had been praying for many years together on the sidewalk. So it was beautiful. And it was one of those moments where I also personally at that time hadn't experienced anything quite so profound in a while. Personally, there were lots of things like that happening on the sidewalk, but it wasn't necessarily me that was there. And so it was another great reminder, that you just never know what your one measly little, hour sacrifice can do, because that changed the trajectory of that couple and that baby's life. So it was amazing. We definitely teared up, but we prayed for her. So we said, can we pray for you? She said she was a woman of faith. And I said, well, then you already know. You already know what your answer is. You know what God thinks about this. And, you don't have to do this alone. We're here to help. And we know people that are in your town that live closer to you that are willing to wrap their arms around you and help you in whatever you need. So it's
just so different. We have all these stories, but when you look at the abortion workers leaving, it's so awesome. The first one was up in New York State, upstate New York. And that was, I think, fall of 2007. We had the first, we're like, a worker left? That wasn't the plan. We were just trying to save babies. But then when it's your worker, when Abby walked into my office, I think when it's personal, it definitely does that. That's one of mine on the list of just, I guess the obvious
I figured
one.
that one
I'll
was
get
the
that
obvious
out of the way.
one.
I'll get that out of the way. But,
Yeah.
but there's two, there's obviously Abby walking in that whole thing.
And this is the anniversary month of
It is
that.
the anniversary
14
month.
years ago.
14 years ago, which is hard to believe. So yeah, well, I think 5 or 6 years ago, we passed knowing Abby as a friend.
As pro-life Abby.
As pro-life Abby, longer than pro-abortion Abby.
Yeah.
And I remember when she converted, that was just so foreign. Because even like 3 or 4 years after, even when Unplanned the book came out, all that, it was still kind of surreal for me to like see her on stage speaking at Students for Life. It just felt strange. But now, of course, it's totally normal. So her walking in, but there's two other within that realm. I think her, and all this is in the movie, her speaking at the closing event of this place. That was awesome. And if you remember, I got to introduce her, which was a lot of fun. And she broke down crying multiple times. It was so beautiful. Her talk was great. It's in Unplanned. But beyond that, we all leave and she's the last one at the fence with the roses, because we handed out roses and we said we're going to lay them at the fence for the 6,400 babies who died. And she took 2 roses for her 2 babies and she laid them at the fence. And everybody had been gone. We'll show this picture. And somebody snagged a photo of how she was literally the last one to leave. Like, it was just absolutely beautiful. I thought they did a great job, by the way, in the movie of kind of cramming all that in and to where it was really, really well done and accurate. What was not accurate is just how alone, she and Doug were of being at the fence. I think that little snapshot of her at the fence is my favorite Abby Johnson moment, as far as just, that is something someone would tell me. And I'd be like, we've got to do a podcast on that, or that needs to go in a book, or that needs to be in a magazine, But I lived it and I witnessed it. And like you said, that's why I love 40 Days for Life. I think it's why our local leaders love 40 Days for Life, because you're inviting people to be part of this. Like, this is going to happen to you. And it's so funny when leaders call and they're like, our abortion facility closed. We can't believe it. And you're like, yeah. And they're like, I never thought it would close. I had no hope. They're just kind of like raw. They're like, I hear about other ones closing, but we're in whatever, California, Illinois.
The Bronx.
We're in the Bronx. Recent closing in the Bronx. And that picture of Pearl, it's just our leader. It's awesome. It's awesome.
It really is. And I know when I got involved in 40 Days for Life, one of the first things I got involved in was my university was trying to open up that late-term abortion facility. And there was really no hope of stopping this. It was like right as Obama was taking office, that he was going to roll in. He was going to do the Freedom of Choice Act, and it's just the abortion industry was on the move. They were rolling, and they were going to bulldoze everything in their path. And so we kind of looked at it and we're like, objectively speaking, we have no chance to stop this. There's just no chance. But you know what? It's the right thing to do. And so we fought it, and we went out there and we prayed and we prayed and we prayed. And that's why probably the most rewarding experience that I've had in the vigil. As I remember, I had to drop my son off somewhere. He was like 2 years old. I think maybe just turned 3 years old. And I'm missing a call from a friend, and then missing a call from another pro-life friend. They were like 2 back-to-back. I was like, okay, I'm going to be a responsible driver, get home, park the car, and then call back and see what happens. And as I made the call, I had gotten the news that university late-term abortion facility that we'd been fighting for a year and a half was canceled. It wasn't going to open. No lives would be lost. We've been out there, the wind, the cold, the heat, the snow, whatever it be, to go in and find out. And again, I don't want to say like we never saw it coming, but like we were underdogs, right? But God loves the underdog story. And because we had people in our community who were willing to go out there and pray that the impossible would happen, I think if we would have had a lesser goal, maybe God wouldn't have answered that prayer. But we trusted that with God, all things truly are possible. And he delivered for us. And he's done so, as you mentioned, in the Bronx, not terribly long ago, in Chicago, in Seattle, in London, at least a couple of times. And there's not a city in the world that has closed more abortion facilities through 40 Days for Life than Sacramento, California. I don't think that's...
Right.
If we're doing our fantasy drafts, nobody's drafting Sacramento in the first round.
Maybe that was one of your team names. Yeah. You forgot about Sacramento. But that speaks to the 75%, is that it's market-driven, and that's why it's so important in post-Roe America. It doesn't matter what Cuomo or Newsom... doesn't matter how cool Newsom's hair is. It's market-driven. You don't think he has cool hair. I'm just trying to give him a compliment. Whatever. Doesn't matter how nutso he is. It's all market driven. And 40 Days for Life is built to counter the abortion market. And we used to live in Virginia, and you'd drive by and you'd pass Philip Morris, right? And Philip Morris was like the coolest, greatest American icon forever. And then it became the devil nearly overnight. And so they've had protesters out there for years, and it was kind of common. I liked it. I always honked at them, even though I don't have a huge issue with people like smoking good cigars. But cigarettes are evil. So they're out there, and I would honk, and like, we support people standing outside. Leave them alone, DOJ, and us. But that's pretty amazing that they've been out there the whole time, and they're doing so to hurt their business. Mm-hmm. And that is just a tested and proven method in the United States of America, that if you publicly stand in opposition to something, you are going to have an impact, whether it's the unions, whether certainly the best example is the civil rights movement. PETA, I think, actually does a good job, and I love eating animals, but I respect how PETA has been consistent in their messaging, the no compromise messaging. But they also go out. They've actually protested 40 Days for Life events in Colorado before.
The PETA people have?
The PETA people. I did an interview one time, and they had a regional director, a PETA person. I don't know what they are. And it was a debate. And it was awkward because you don't want to be, but we don't want to kill the babies. Like, you don't want to kill the chickens, and I understand that, but you could be pro-PETA and pro-life.
Yeah.
It was just it's just one of those dumb, lazy reporter things where it's like, we're divided. Of course, PETA hates 40 Days for Life, and 40 Days for Life hates PETA. Y'all now yell at each other. It's just like lazy, but I couldn't figure out like...
Okay.
Anyways.
It's fun.
But all the PETA has an impact. They go to these factories, and it's even more so with abortion. That's why the 75% there, because we're already uncomfortable with it. They're not advertising big time. They want to blend. They want to nest. Planned Parenthood doesn't want to be black. They don't want to be white. They want to be gray. They want to be in the middle. They just want to kind of nest in a community. And because we already know that's controversial.
And this is, I think, democracy at its essence, right? Because you can have the machinery of elections, and you can have voting, and you can have all these different things that we get together and do every 4 years, every 2 years, municipally more. But very few of us have actual political power. This is a case where I think democracy at its most fundamental level is making an impact in your community. And the fact that we have the ability and the freedom to go out and stand in front of Planned Parenthood, pray, put it out of business, not through force, but through persuasion of hearts and minds, I think that is America at its best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And even with causes we disagree with, we support peaceful assembly. This is why the Occupy Wall Street people were so unpopular. I think it became the fall of BLM in 2020, is when you directly support violence or appear to support violence or promote violence, it ruined your movement. And that's why those things they flash up, and it's the biggest deal in the world, and it's all that dominates the media. And then you're like, where's the guy who led Occupy Wall Street San Francisco?
I didn't even think of this story till just now, but this kind of goes with our theme. This was another great moment. Smaller, much smaller than a save or an abortion worker leaving. But when all of the Occupy stuff was going on, we definitely had Occupy Austin. And I remember we had this back and forth because the abortion workers kept calling, they kept calling the police on us about our signs. And they didn't like that our signs were leaning up against a pole, a fence, or whatever, right? And it was just stupid stuff just to try to distract us, because that's all they could get. And so they call the police on us for like the dozenth time, and police were getting tired, and they were also being overworked at that time because of the Occupy stuff. And so one of them finally came and told us, "You're not allowed to have your sign here." And we were like, "No, that's not correct. We actually have every right to have this sign. It's not selling anything, and we're not beating anybody with the sign. We're simply displaying this sign." And we had it leaning up next to, I think, our vigil bin. And so the officer explained to me, "Well, it's just that we have a lot of people that are have been leaving a lot of trash lately, and they're abandoning their property, and so this is just one of those things." And of course, I talked to our local attorney about this, but I told the officer, I said, "Listen, number one, when I realized he's got Occupy Austin on the brain, and they're just trying to keep the streets clean and everything, I said, number one, we're not them. We don't abandon our stuff. We pick up our stuff. You can come and check after we leave the vigil in the evenings every day. We clean up the area if there's any trash, which is normally not from us. It's from just people passing by. Number one, we pick up our stuff. Number two, we shower. So we're not the Occupy people."
Showering is very much underrated.
But that was kind of what he's like. Okay, that's why he's like, he like let it go after that. I was like, "Thank you, officer. Thank you so much for your service. Have a nice day."
Was it you and I that were in San Francisco and we walked in the middle of Occupy Wall Street? Who was I with?
Was it Occupy? We've seen some stuff in San Francisco.
It was Occupy Wall Street,
Okay.
San Francisco.
Okay.
But it was after the West Coast Walk for Life, and we like turned a corner and saw the police with the shields, and they like had the gas, the cool gun from Terminator 2 that shoots the gas, and you're just sitting there going, "I think our hotel's right over there, but let's take a 9-hour detour to get away
Yeah,
from
is Lombard Street this way?
That's right. Yeah, big gulps, huh? Okay, I have one that I know it's out there because it's in the books and we've used it a lot, but it cannot get emphasized enough, and that is the Milagros story of Rosa coming over and being told by 2 doctors that her baby was a monster and severely handicapped and no quality of life. The mom, Rosa's home life being a mess, being abused, just they have no money. She's here illegally. The whole thing's a disaster. She's the poster child for this is why we have abortion in the United States of America. God bless it. Let's go. And she just didn't want to do it down in her heart. And she went in. Finally, a doctor made her an appointment to that massive abortion facility in Orange, California. We have that footage. I've been there many, many times. I know y'all have been out there on a big highway. She goes in. Alejandra's there. They speak Spanish. She chooses life. Milagros is born with no legs, and is just this beautiful child. So that's the 30-second version of the story if you're unfamiliar with it. But my favorite parts for me personally were meeting pregnant Rosa the first time, because Alejandra had told me her story in like 30 seconds, like I just said, for the audience, and is walking me. I'm at one of their rallies. And I think the fact that her personal life was so awful, and just meeting her, she had tears in her eyes. I gave her a hug. She was starting to show. And I just remember thinking, this person is a saint. Like, this is a hero. Like, I've been told your story for 30 seconds. We can't speak to each other because I'm an idiot and I didn't pay attention in Spanish for 14 years of education. We can't communicate, and yet I've never admired anybody more in my life that I didn't know. It's not like some celebrity or some author where you're like, oh, I'd love to meet him. It was a deeper level than that. And it was just beautiful, the look on her face. And then you fast forward, I didn't see her again until 4 or 5 years later when Milagros was 4. And I walked up and I'm going to because by then I hadn't written the book. I hadn't written the beginning and the end of abortion where I put their story in there. That was not written yet. So I was going to, she came to a 40 Days for Life event and I was going to try to remember we met and try to make the connection. And she was not interested in any of that. She ran up to me with Milagros and just plopped Milagros in my arms. And better. Milagros just hugged me. Oh, I was like a mess. And I just hugged her. And we have a picture that we can put on there. It's such a beautiful feel-good story. But I never forget that. And, of all the garbage that we deal with and we harp on and we do podcasts on, whether it be politicians, it could be the crazy things the abortion industry is saying, it could be the craziness we're facing with the DOJ to just do this basic stuff. None of it comes close to those moments. None of it. It's just so minuscule. And I think we need that because we've said many times abortion and the mentality that drives it, this cold, cynical, sterile mentality, is just depressing when you think about it. It's just an attack on the virtue of hope. And there's just so much good out there. There's so much hope. And I think so many people get clouded in their view of the world. Certainly COVID didn't help. But that's one of the reasons why so many people, I think, are drawn to 40 Days for Life, because it's just good news and we have good news and you get these beautiful moments. Of course you're going to deal with persecution, but that's just life. Who cares?
We were out at the Indianapolis 40 Days for Life vigil one time, and I arrived there to speak. And no sooner had I departed the vehicle, but these two ladies come up and they're like, "Hey, we read all of the emails, we hear all the stories, we listen to the podcast, but we've never seen any results out here. I've never seen a single baby saved. The workers
You guys are full of crap."
Yeah, basically.
That's translation.
Why are you making this up?
The parking lot is full. The workers, they're not leaving. They're flipping me off. They're like, "I know what you're going to say, but just, does it work? Does it really work?" They knew what I was going to say, but they needed something. And I didn't have to say anything at all because I didn't know it. They didn't know it. I don't think anybody there knew it at the time, but not much further from me to you, Sean, was a little girl, 2 years old. Her name was Laurel, and she had been brought out to the 40 Days for Life rally to celebrate and to say thank you to the volunteers who were responsible for saving her life. So they're asking me here, Heather is asking me, does it really work? And then you're sort of in the position of the saved baby right there on the spot.
And what do we have behind door number 3?
That's right.
That's interesting because one of the other stories that came to my mind happened probably 10 years ago now, and it was in Austin. And I had gotten a call from some French reporters that were doing a documentary. And I don't know why, but they called me and they wanted to interview, and not only interview, but they wanted to go to the sidewalk. They wanted me to take him to a pregnancy center, show them and I just thought, okay, at that point I felt comfortable enough that I could tell their traps. I could see the traps that they may be leading me into. So I thought, oh no, they're going to get me filmed in a baby boutique, showing about all these materials and this support and then this counseling room and then on the sidewalk peacefully praying. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a shot, right? And I gave them some ground rules. You can't film clients. You can't, you need to be respectful when we go to the sidewalk, that sort of thing. We get to the sidewalk. This is a December morning in Texas. That may not mean anything, but this particular one, because of our crazy humidity, it was 28 degrees.
That's rare.
It's rare.
Crazy. For December?
And it was
I thought
December.
you were going to say it's 58.
No.
I would just get cold listening to that.
28 degrees with the humidity that we have. So it's a biting cold. It feels a lot colder than it is, than 28 degrees would be in other places. And so...
Or as we say, Steve's Easter.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go. Steve's Easter. It's a good kind of comparison. So we're praying, and... one of the guys, he was speaking to me and he was like, "Tell me, I shouldn't try to do a French accent, but
I like it."
Yeah, no, no. But he's like, "Tell me, does this really work? And have you ever actually seen?" And so I was like, Yeah, we have. I said, do we see it every time? No, we don't see miracles every time we come to the sidewalk, but it actually does. And a few minutes later, so he's like probably standing just 5 feet away from me, and he's just filming the volunteers praying. And he had there was a couple of them. It was him and a camera guy and another camera guy. And this woman walks up from the street, and she goes over to one of our volunteers, Luz Maria, and she starts talking to her. And I wasn't sure, what this was about. And so I go over there eventually because Luz Maria needed some help. And she's Spanish speaking only. It turns out she had taken the bus. She was walking from the bus stop. She had an abortion appointment there that morning. But she was looking for a sign from God, which is one of the things we hear often that women are looking for. So
we hear it all the time, and it sounds like a cliche, like
Yeah.
some cheesy movie.
Yeah.
Sign from God. But that's what they tell us.
That's what they tell us. I've heard it so many times directly from moms.
Which we share with volunteers, by the way, because it shows there's a few that would just say, oh, they're all evil and they're marching in there to have the abortion. Like, no, they're not. They're usually like Christians who are confused or broken or scared or like, yeah, I'm pro-life, but I got to do this. I'm terrified.
Yeah, yeah. She ended up saying thankfully Luz Maria was much more fluent because you guys know I'm not actually fluent.
Which
I
thought
never
you were for
lied about that.
What, 12 years?
But I could understand enough, and Luz Maria was there to help elaborate about the resources and everything like that. And so I was just like, oh my gosh. And so she agreed right then and there to go to a pregnancy center. So we called a pregnancy center right away. Thankfully, that was open. By the way, pregnancy centers, please be open during abortion business hours. Very, very important if any pregnancy center volunteers or staff are listening. And so we were able to get her to go. So she went there and asked if the volunteer could go there too. So the volunteer said, sure, like here's the address, or maybe she gave her a ride or got her a ride share or something, a taxi or something. But they went to this pregnancy center, and so they left, and I was just standing there stunned because I was like, oh my gosh, she was going to have an abortion and she changed her mind. And not that I had not seen that miracle before, but it's always wonderful when you do. And so the French reporter came over to me and he's like, well, what was that about? And I was like, that was a mom that changed her mind. She told us and he didn't know what she was saying because he didn't speak Spanish. Said she told us she had an abortion appointment and she went to a pregnancy center instead. And now, my experience up to that with a couple of days of being with that reporter was I couldn't read them well enough to know, were they pro-abortion? Were they pro-life? Were they neutral, which is hard to be neutral? I'm usually pretty good at telling pretty quickly. And this one I wasn't sure about. And I kind of got the sense that the more that he talked to me and asked me questions, just his reactions to what I was saying. I wasn't saying anything that profound, but I was just saying the truth. And he would just pause, and I've never heard that before. And so I was like, I think this guy is, I don't think he thinks we're full of crap. I think he actually is seeing this for himself, and he might be a little bit on our side at least. And I tried to really address a lot of angles with him. His eyes got so big when I said, that was a mom that changed life. You just asked me 5 minutes ago, does this actually happen?
Yeah.
He was stunned. The look on his face, he was like, are you serious? And I said, yes, that's what happened. And a few minutes later, we're still on the sidewalk, and they text me a photo of the sonogram. And I was like, here's her little baby. And this particular sonogram was really unique. It was unlike one I had seen before, because the baby was crouched in the fetal position, and you could see the head and the legs very clearly, and it was like up in the top corner of the sonogram image. And it was just the coolest thing. And this baby was, I think, 12 weeks, something like that. So she was already about to be or in her first trimester.
Which is great, because that's what abortion is in France, is 12 weeks. And they essentially have no pro-life movement. Shame on them. We've tried for years to get a campaign in France, but they have, not to get into the weeds, but they have a law basically trying to ban public displays of religion because they have a Muslim problem in their view. And so they've outlawed a lot of public religious stuff, and they're saying 40 Days for Life falls under that. It's really all BS when you look into it. But we can't convince any of the French
And they protest everything.
They protest everything. They had 1 million people at the pro-marriage march in Paris. I mean, the whole notion that France is totally lost is not true. Before it burned, Cathedral Notre Dame, 500 people at daily mass. So that part of it is frustrating.
Did you ever get to see, was it a documentary, a news segment?
Yeah.
No, I every time I'm in an interview, whether it's a local media or if it's a documentary, and often there's been documentaries from other countries, I say, please send me this project when you're done. I have never gotten sent the final project.
He had to go on his mandatory 6-week paid vacation before he could get it to you, probably.
Anytime, but
maybe his director didn't like what he came up with. They didn't get dirt on us like they thought they would. And
that's NPR 101.
Yeah.
Or sorry, PBS. NPR has printed a lot of art. PBS has interviewed me 1 million times, and I'm just like, well, this is a waste of time.
Yeah.
We just had, in the recent issue of Day 41 magazine, Robert Cahoon. I just learned how to actually pronounce his name correctly for the first time this year.
You've only known him 13 years.
Kind of,
Cahoon. I called him Calhoun for a long time.
I liked when you said Calhoun.
When he came back, first time after COVID, was back in the States for the symposium. I was like, Robert, how do you say your name? And then I learned Robert Cahoon. So when sidetrack. Robert Cahoon wrote a great article in Day 41 magazine where he's depicting true story. It happened. The woman in Scotland is doing an interview with the local media, and she gives these great answers, and the camera guy's like, "That's perfect. They'll never use it." They ask another question.
Great camera guy.
He's like, That's second question. Like, that's also a great answer. They're never going to use it.
Mm-hmm.
That's hilarious. And then he got canned. The honest camera guy. Oh, man. Okay, I want to reference something that is really sad. Sorry to kill the moment. Okay, you remember in Unplanned where the family comes to stop the woman from having the abortion? Okay.
I remember that day in real life.
I remember that day in real life, and I couldn't remember because I can't keep up with that time period because we started having children. But when that happened, were you a volunteer? Did you work here?
No, I was already working here.
You were already, okay. So, yeah.
It was 2009.
2009.
Not long before Abby left, actually.
Yeah. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. And I'm really glad that Abby put that in the book, and I'm really glad that they chose to put it in the movie because a lot of stuff from her book just couldn't make the movie. To me, that was the antithesis of one of the best moments ever that I've had as a sidewalk counselor. I never saved a baby as a sidewalk counselor because I don't think I was a good sidewalk counselor based on that stat alone. But I was always with Mary Lisa. But we were out there one time, and I don't know if you were around, but the preacher's daughter from Houston who had twins. And it's very unique because in Bryan or College Station, like if you live here, you would drive to Houston for your abortion. You wouldn't come where we are.
Right.
Or if you're a student, you're away from home, it's easy to come to the Bryan Planned Parenthood where we are now. But for locals, they all went to Houston. This girl, her dad was a preacher, totally shocked and embarrassed and scared. And she drove up here and she was in the clinic. We told her, we were like yelling, asked to see the ultrasound, all of this. She was in there forever. Then she came back out. We thought she was done with the abortion. She wasn't. So you could tell she was struggling. She's on the steps. Elizabeth McClung starts talking to her. Like we have all these different people. We're like going in shifts. And then we get to the bottom. It was good for her to share, but it came down to her dad.
Yeah. And
trusting, and knowing nothing about the dad, we just said, it's going to work out no matter what. She was so wound up, you really knew that the parents weren't going to be like throw her out of the house or anything. So she chose life and went back. And the father, obviously, he was terrified that she got so close to aborting the kids, and she had the babies and had her twins. But it was just one of these beautiful, awesome moments of a family involved in abortion. And I remember how joyful it was. She sent us a card, and then in 2009 coming and having the opposite happen where the family didn't want the abortion to take place, except they were actually there and they were able to stop it and they were unsuccessful. Whereas the preacher guy, he wasn't even there. It was just the grace of God. We were there and she chose life. But I think that is a very real experience for people when families are involved. And it's most of the time, I think it lines up on the sadder side, which is these horrible parents dragging their kids in for an abortion.
And a lot of people wonder how they wonder about the logic, because it's not that uncommon that when they find out they're having multiples, they decide to choose life.
I know people are
and
blown
people
away
are
when
like,
we say that.
wait,
But they're like,
that's harder.
They're like,
Why
well,
would
it's
you?
twins?
Yeah.
Well, I want them.
Right. And then
all the time.
So then it's like, if you follow that logic through, so you can kill one baby, but you can't kill two. And I think that's what it is. It's like they feel more guilty, and maybe they were already looking for something to, send
But
them the
doesn't
opposite
it humanize the
direction, too.
pregnancy?
It makes it less abstract. I think that's why, like, when you can tell the sex, if you're able to figure out the sex, or the heart, that's why the whole heartbeat bill situation has been so effective, because, there's a beating heart. Like, when you actually learn what it is that's going on inside the womb, people choose life. That's why education is so important. That's why fetal development information and outreach is so important. I think the twins is like the greatest case, because it would seem to double the number of problems, double the diapers, double the midnight feedings, double whatever it is that took the woman to the abortion facility, double it. And now here we have that awareness, like, this is not like a problem. These are my children.
And there's something about twins, and it's great because we do this a lot, where we just send out an email with a story like this, and the subject line is twins.
Yeah.
And the open rate goes through the roof. There's just something about...
We had triplets one time a year or two ago.
Yeah. Well, and then remember the quadruplets?
Yes.
One of our Washington leaders. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
wow.
Yes. Yes. So,
That's even more
then
rare.
you're just...
I bet we could have 4 or 5 podcasts with just these stories, at least.
We could. Absolutely. Okay, my last one, and then I want y'all to share one and we can wrap up. But this is not sensational, but I would just say one of my favorite personal experiences is going to the vigils during COVID, especially looking back, because it's easy to look back and be like, oh, yeah, we kind of made a mistake. Maybe we shouldn't have done the lockdowns. Maybe we shouldn't have driven around in our cars with a mask. I didn't do that. But, all the craziness that went on that now people have flipped on, liberals and conservatives alike, just the paranoia of the unknown. And yet we didn't stop. The vigil participation increased. But that fall of 2020, when the world was just at its height of just fear, we're all going to die, the election's going on, our country's just mayhem, and the huge growth of 40 Days for Life. And going out, I went to a number of states, but I remember doing one trip to Florida, and then I went cross country to California. And I think, well, California, there's going to be 2 people here, and they're just going to, and
Yeah.
yeah, total opposite. Packed. Fairfield was packed, and Sacramento, packed. It was so encouraging. And I'm like, this is the best of America that you just talked about, of everybody is living in fear. And at the time, maybe some of it was justified. I don't know. I don't want to bring this COVID podcast. But in the midst of that, turning back the clock, that was one of the most remarkable experiences I've had, of just, our people will never go away.
Yeah, my favorite part about all of that was help advertising and recruiting by saying we are already naturally socially distanced. So really actually taking that seriously. And if you want to wear a mask outside on the sidewalk, you can. If you don't want to, everybody has the freedom to spread out from one another. Like, we're already naturally socially distanced.
But vitamin E played a role, and vitamin D, like, you're out in the sun during 40 Days for Life.
Yeah, that
you
kills
won't get COVID if you
viruses.
sign up for an hour. It's amazing how, like, you'd see flyers and all, like, get your vitamin
Yes.
D. It was hysterical. And I never thought vitamin E and 40 Days for Life would be some kind of like marketing campaign, but it happened.
Yeah. There you go.
I think one of my favorite experiences was this was before COVID, when you could like show up to work sick and not be blacklisted and condemned. we've been doing these workshops to train 40 Days for Life leaders all across the country this past year. And we had sort of a prototype version of that. And we did one in Indianapolis. And so we went out to Indianapolis, did the workshop, and I called our local leader at the time. Her name was Eileen. And I was like, hey, since we're coming into town, would you like to do like a prayer rally, maybe like the night before we do this Saturday workshop? And she said, yeah, Steve, that sounds great. But I was thinking maybe we would probably have better turnout. Could you come at noon on Friday and be there during the day? People can come when they're off of work for lunch, and the place will be open for business. I just think that would be the most effective time if you could come at noon instead of the evening. I said, sure, no problem. But it wasn't long before I was starting to have regrets, because I realized I was going to have to get up super early that day. And then I realized I was going to have to, there's a time zone, so an hour earlier. And that was going to put me in Chicago at the mid-morning, like commute rush hour. So like an hour and a half before that, I was going to have to get up.
And you hate Chicago anyways.
Yes, I will resist the temptation to develop that thought. But I was like starting to get sick. I wasn't feeling well. And I spent like this family dinner trying to find out some excuse that I could get out of going to Indianapolis for this prayer rally. I'll just show up in time for the workshop. Maybe there's a way out. And I thought I had this idea, and I laid it out for my wife at dinner. I was like, what do you think? And she just kind of looks at me. I was like, yeah. So like, do you think that's acceptable? Like, do you think that's too lame, or is that okay? And she looks at me. Okay, say something. You think I can do this, or is it too lame? And she goes, oh, you're serious about all that?
Yeah, there you go, Laura.
My cousin Vinny.
I thought you were just whining. No, suck it up. Go do your job.
Yes, that's what I expected, Laura.
So I sucked it up, and I went and did my job. With my tail between my legs, I showed up to Indianapolis. I made it on time. I was dog tired. I wasn't feeling well. I did get sick. But we're like halfway through this hour-long prayer rally, and someone says, hey, great news. Our sidewalk counselors just saved a baby. Now, I knew that were it not for that rally, there was nobody scheduled to be out there that day.
Oh,
so
wow.
like this is where like the Lord used me to help save a baby. I fought him tooth and nail, fought him every step of the way, but he used me to save a baby. So flash forward about 45 minutes, we're like packing up the speakers and putting the microphone stand in the back of some guy's minivan. And someone came up and said, hey, we just saved a baby. I said, I know, I heard like 45 minutes ago. Praise God, congratulations, great news. He's like, no, another one. So 2 babies saved. So a few months later, I'm on the phone with Eileen, and I'm just expressing how grateful Eileen still doesn't know that I was trying to get out of a rally. So anybody
You don't want her to know.
Yeah, if you're
she'll kill you.
If you're listening to the podcast, this has to stay our secret. Do not tell Eileen from Indianapolis that I tried to weasel out of her rally. But we're on the phone, and I'm not letting her know I was trying to get out of it. And I just say how grateful I was and how delighted I was that not 1 but 2 babies were saved during that rally. And Eileen gets kind of sheepish, and I think she's about to tell me, well, they came back. And so my heart's about to break, and she's like, Steve, gosh, I'm sorry. I thought I told you, but I didn't know. But we actually saved a 3rd baby that day out on this. So 3 babies saved. I didn't want to go. I'm lame. I have no excuse. May God have mercy on my soul. But that's one of my favorite memories.
I love it. I was expecting you to say something like that. Laura would say something similar, like, "Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, babies are dying, but sure, you just sleep in so that you can
You've
get there
hung
later."
out with Laura now, so I know that you are of kindred spirit.
The guilt. It's so good. Well, I think that's a good one to wrap up on, because it's normal.
Yep.
And that's what most people. It's easy to share good stories. Because we need to be reminded of that, because there's a million times in our life where we either have bad stories or we get persecuted, and we need to pull these out and
That's
remember.
What's so great about the 75% statistic, because we don't see them, but it's a reminder that even as we have all these things, maybe we're sick, maybe we have to get up super early, dry cleaning, soccer practice, work things. There's a million reasons not to do it. And nobody would blame you if you said no, but when you do, of every 4 children that are scheduled to lose their lives that 1 hour, 3 of them may live to see their birth, to play Little League, to gymnastics lessons, piano, get married, have children of their own one day. That impact extends generations from just 1 hour of a yes.
Yep.
Yeah, and I had a doctor who will go nameless, but he wasn't like a trauma surgeon or anything, but he said, 40 Days for Life is one of the few things you can do, even for me, where you can save a life. Because in his area of medicine, he didn't like save lives a lot. But he said, unless you're You work in the ER, you're a cardiovascular surgeon, you're an
EMS.
oncologist, EMS.
Yeah.
Most humans
Police,
walking
yeah.
around don't have a normal opportunity where they can just pop in and save the life of someone. And he pointed that out. He's like, this is what makes 40 Days for Life so unique, is you could save a life. It sounds so bumper stickerish, but it's true.
It's like that Ronald Reagan line to the Marines. Like, most people go through their life wondering if they've made a difference. The Marines don't have that problem. I think same thing for 40 Days for Life people.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and it's a great invitation to be part of these experiences. Send your experiences to us either on the YouTube page or email us at podcast@40daysforlife.com, podcast@40daysforlife.com. And if you want to send us your great experience and the name of your fantasy football team, we will read both of those.
You know we're going to get twice as many
Oh,
fantasy football teams.
Nobody, everybody's like, one time it was raining and I think a lady chose life.
Okay.
We're the Philly cheesesteak bad dogs.
But more importantly, if you want to continue praying, or even if you don't want to, you should do it anyway. Contact me if you want to do 365.
Yes.
Because that's what we need. We need more people. The more people on the sidewalks, the more the miracles we are likely to see. So
Heather at 40daysforlife.com.
Yeah.
Heather at 40daysforlife.com for 365. Pull up that map. There's a lot of maps. Of course, we'll have many podcasts coming out over the coming weeks. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Heather. Please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God
Go
bless you.
cartographers.